Good evening, everyone. The time is 5:06 p.m. and the Warwick Finance Committee is open. May I have a motion for acceptance of the minutes for the meeting held on November 1st?
Move to accept.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. So this evening, for the first time, we have no items on the bid package that equals or exceeds the $50,000. So I am going to open up to the committee, to the council, and to the public discussion on bid items that they feel is must be addressed. So I would like to start on I'd like to call out bid number 2022-215.
Me too.
Is there any items that the other members of the committee would like to call out for discussion?
I'm good. Vinnie? Mr. Councilman Gephardt?
Okay. I would also like to call out for discussion bid 2022-189. Yes, please. As well as bid 2021-172. And that'll be also members of the committee. You have nothing to discuss? Yes. I've asked to speak on 2022-215, found on page 55, 2022-189, found on page 61, and 2021-172, found on page 76. Thank you. Members of the council. Councilman Lattisaur.
Thank you, Chairman. You've already selected two of the ones I had marked, but I'd like to also add 2021-034, found on page 60. I'm sorry. Yeah, found on page 64, item number 9.
That was 2021-034.
Correct.
Found on page 64. HVAC maintenance, yes. Any other members of the council? Members of the public? Any items from members of the public on the bid package? So if everyone, I'm going to go to page 55. 2022 structural fire fighting helmets. Good evening, Chief. If you could identify yourself, please.
Good evening, Assistant Chief Umbenhauer from the Fire Department.
Good evening, Chief. One of the questions that I came across and I just lost the internet on my, as you know, we're becoming environmental friendly, and it's just now coming back. Oh, I got it back. I just reconnected, or I thought I did. There it is. Thank you. So again, I do apologize, but I'll need just a moment. Yes, please. It's found on 55. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. There you go, so you can use it as a reference. I'll use the one that you just gave. Is the actual. Thank you. So just looking at the letter, Chief, I did call you on this, and I want to go on record saying that you and I discussed this. I did call you when I reviewed, over the last week, I reviewed the entire packet, and I came across some things, so I gave you the courtesy call. And you did explain to me the reasons why that this bid expires on December 10th, but why it's coming to us. And if I could ask you explain to the council and committee why it falls within the 60 days.
Sure. The helmet that we've been using over the last couple of years, when we went out to spec it and put it out to bid, we found out that that helmet was discontinued. So we actually had to get we had to go assess and find a similar helmet that met our specifications, get one of them so that we could evaluate it, and then that took a couple weeks' time. So then we could rewrite the spec to meet the helmet that we felt that met our needs.
Thank you, Chief. So this does meet all the specs that are required, this new helmet, if you will.
It does. It's almost exactly like the helmet that we used in the past, except it's a little bit lighter, which is an advantage to us.
Understood. Thank you so much for giving me the time and explaining that, but also explaining it again here. Are there any further questions from members of the committee? Members of the council? Councilwoman Travis?
Yes, how many helmets are we talking for those, what is it, 7,500?
Yeah, that'll buy us 22 helmets if we use all that money. We know at least next group of recruits that are coming in, there's 12 to 15 of them, so that's going to take the majority of them up. And then a couple helmets for the ones that are starting to expire or need replacement.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Lattisaur.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening.
Chief, can you, what is a retractable eye protection?
So retractable eye protection is eye and face shield that's built into the helmet as an integral part of it. So basically retracts up into the helmet itself so that it's readily deployable. So it either goes off the front of the helmet like you see traditionally, or it integrates inside the shell of the helmet. Different than like goggles, which go off the back of your helmet and fall off and get lost, and when you need them the most, they're not there.
Is that manually deployed?
It's manually deployed.
Okay.
Yep.
And was that part of the specifications the last time we bought helmets?
It was. We felt that the goggles are inadequate for eye protection because when you need them most, like I said, they're not there for you. They can easily be lost and torn off. The integral ones don't come off, they're protected. And when we put the spec out, we said they either had to be integrated into the helmet or attached to the front of the helmet.
It makes good sense. And I'm assuming that's a pretty rugged attachment that, just a bang, up against something is not going to break it.
No, they're very rugged. They're made for impact protection.
Yeah, no, that makes good sense. So these helmets that you retire after approximately 10 years of service life, what happens to them? What do you do with them?
Typically, they're stored. We typically store them for use. I don't really know what we use them for because we can't use them for training or put them out in emergency services. So we do have quite a number of helmets that we do have in storage that have expired.
So those expired helmets, you said go into storage?
They do.
Where is that storage?
Right at our Station 1, we have a gear supply closet that we have. And we typically keep any expired and old gear as long as we have the space to keep it.
You must have a ton of those because since I've been here, we've voted on a lot of helmets.
Well, We've put on a lot of guys. So we haven't bought helmets in quite a few years. We bought probably 25 of them last year, but that was 23 recruits. So 23 of those 25 went to recruits. So they weren't replacing helmets, they were new.
Okay, thank you. That answers my questions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Foley has a follow-up question.
Only because, as you might know, I buy and resell items, especially vintage, and I do some with the older fire helmets. There's a website, Municibids, where cities and towns sell their surplus goods. And even though those cannot be used by another fire department, collectors would probably buy those. Now, my follow-up to this, I spoke to the chief, the colonel, Connors, on the police department, and they said there's a restriction from us selling those in that surplus market. Is that correct?
I do not know the answer to that question. I know we have to look at the liability of selling those because we know for a fact that they can't be used for emergency services. I would assume on the legal side, you'd have to have them sign something that says they're not going to be put into service. But I don't really know the answer to that. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Believe it or not, I'm on that site almost daily, and some of the items that go up there, fire helmets I've seen, the alarm boxes. Just today I was looking, it was scuba gear. Not that I was buying that, but it was there. It's just an interesting side and maybe something we can explore.
Definitely worth
Thank you.
exploring.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other further questions from members of the council? Any questions from members of the public? Questions from members of the public? Thank you. Hearing none, we'll move on to bid 2022-189. That is found on 61. Hi, Christy.
Good evening, Chairman.
Good evening. I did not have a chance to call you, but this is a simple question. Thank you. I know that we're buying oil for the Holden Elementary School, which is still housing some of our offices.
Yes.
And until the Sawtooth building is ready. And this purchase right here, so once we lock in at this, no matter what the oil prices do, no matter what inflation shows, it'll lock in at this price?
So it's not a price that we're locking in at. It's an increment.
Okay.
So it's just like our gas, our fuel bid. It's an increment over the posted daily price. So I get an email every single day with the oil prices. We use the low rack Providence, depending on what it is. For this would be number 2 heating oil. And whatever that posted price is for that day, it's either a plus or a minus. In this case, it's a plus. So we add 0.0, I think it's 0.175 or 0.715.
Yes, 0.0715. Yep.
Yeah, so we would add that increment to the posted price, and that's what we pay per gallon.
Per gallon. Okay, so the posted price as in what pardon my ignorance, but the wholesale or what the retail?
Is the wholesale.
The wholesale.
Yeah.
Okay, if you don't, I understand because I didn't hit you with this question before. Do you happen to know the industry average of the markup?
We just did it's for us, it's with the wholesale price, even for diesel, which is,
Okay.
is comparable to the heating oil. It's, 260, 270. It
Right.
really just depends on the market
Okay,
and whatever day we get our delivery. So,
thank you. No, I do thank you. I'm sorry I hit you on the floor with these questions.
It's okay.
I just did not have a chance to call you, but thank you. That was pretty much, you clarified it, and I appreciate that. Any questions from the committee? Questions from the council? Councilman Lattisaur.
Thank you. Hi, Christy.
hi.
Christy, what is the posted price of oil today?
I did not look to see what it was.
Do we know what it has been in the past couple of weeks?
I don't check it on a daily basis. I usually, so even like with our fuel deliveries, whatever day the delivery comes, we get an invoice from the vendor. I take that invoice and I figure out between the posted daily price and the increment that we're being charged, that they're charging us the proper amount per gallon for whatever the commodity is.
Where could I check to get the posted price of fuel oil today?
I'm not sure for and pardon my expression, I can't think of a better way to put it, but like the average person, we pay for a subscription to Oil Price Daily, and that's where we get it from. But I'm not sure outside of that how I'm not sure how I would get it if I didn't
Right.
know, if I didn't get the email.
And that kind of goes to my point. I didn't think of it until the chairman asked about the posted price. I didn't think of that until just now. So it takes me back to the retail pricing of things. If we don't know what the published price is today of fuel oil, assuming we're getting a delivery today, how do we know that we're paying the correct amount?
Because it's my responsibility to ensure that when the invoice comes in, that we're being charged the proper amount.
So when the invoice comes in, you'll verify that the current price of oil that day that they showed on their invoice was in fact the current price.
Yes, and I
Okay.
initial it and I send it to purchasing.
Okay. So this amount that you're looking for, 15,000, as I read the position paper, is this exclusively for Holden School?
Yes,
Are you going to be able to purchase, and I have no idea how much oil that building takes, I'm sure it's a considerable amount. Is there enough storage in the tanks at that school to
That
buy
buil-
all your oil at one time?
that building has a 5,000 gallon tank. The alarm will go off once it hits 1,000 gallons because it's kind of like a low oil alarm. So we try to ensure that it never gets to that point. They get printouts. It really depends on the usage, how cold it is, that type of stuff. And now that building maintenance is housed in there, we have to heat that wing of the building as well. So it could be a little bit of an additional cost for another department in there. But, we try to keep it at least 2,500 gallons.
So when we move to the Sawtooth building, I'm kind of jumping around here a bit. This expense goes away, basically, right?
I couldn't speak to that. I don't know what the plans are for that building, and I would hate to assume.
But the building, is it, other than heating it, is the building currently maintained by the school department?
No,
It's strictly on us?
yes.
Okay. So do you know how many gallons of oil we have in the tank at that building now?
They got a delivery last week. They were probably around 1,200 gallons when I called for the delivery. I asked for 1,500, so they should have had 2,700, depending on the usage that they've had over the last week. I'd say they probably still have, 24. I don't really know.
So 2,700 out of a 5,000 capacity.
Correct.
Are you considering topping off this tank, given the crazy, ridiculous, out-of-control pricing that's going on right now with any type of oil or oil byproducts?
Well, it's kind of a, moving target. I mean, some days it can be, higher than other days. And, yesterday it could have been, 280 a gallon. Tomorrow it could be 260. So it really just depends on when we order it and what that commodity is costing at that point.
So right now you're saying that we have this fluctuation up and down in fuel oil prices?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions from members of the council? Members of the public? Members of the public? Thank you. We're going to go in order. So Councilman Lattisaur, bid number 2021-034, HVAC maintenance and repairs for city-owned buildings. That's found on page 64. Before Councilman, you begin on that, I just want to verify with Christie. Christie, this is following on the state MPA, correct?
Which, the HVAC?
2021-034 HVAC.
No,
maintenance.
this is a bid that, that we put out.
Thank you. Okay, yep. All right, thank you. Go ahead, Councilman, thank you.
Just bear with me 1 second, Chairman. I'm just making some notes from my last questions. Just one minute. Christie, so you're looking to increase this cap that you have by another $30,000. And in August of this year, we increased it by $50,000 at that point. And now, a few months later, you're looking to increase it another $30,000. So could you just tell us what the $50,000 was spent on and what you need the $30,000 for?
This bid doesn't expire until August 29th of '22. So it does, it's another 10 months or so. The $50,000 was either heating or cooling in any given city building. Right now, we have about $19,600 left in the cap available to us. But at the rate we're going with things needing repair, we wanted to ensure that we stayed ahead of it. So we weren't having to put anything off until we could get council approval. Right now, I have 2 quotes on my desk that are about $7,000 combined. I'm waiting for a quote on another building from building maintenance. And I mean, anything that happens between now and next August, I may be back again, asking again for another increase on this. But it's entirely dependent on what is failing or.
So the $50,000 that we increased it in August, you just said that some of it was used for, heating and cooling. In this bid, you're saying that it's for HVAC repairs in city buildings. So that $50,000 from August, was that used for heating and cooling expenses, or was it used for heating and cooling repairs? Because this is calling for repairs.
They're all essentially the same, whether it's repairs or expenses. It's like, a circulator pump goes in one building, and then, we have to have something, an HVAC air conditioning unit fixed. I mean, not now, but in another building. We've had a lot of issues lately, and I think it just bears mentioning too that Public Works is responsible for every single city building for maintenance except for the school department.
But there is a difference between repairs and expenses. Expenses, electric, fuel oil. Repairs are repairs, broken components, broken equipment, et cetera, et cetera. So this $30,000 increase that you're looking for, is that for heating expenses such as oil or electric, AC, refrigerant expenses, or is this $30,000 you're looking for now, is it for repairs?
It's strictly for repairs. It's the only thing that we can use that dollar amount is for the repairs covered under this bid.
Okay. And you still have 19,000 left of the 50 we increased it.
Correct.
Okay. And what repairs are in the hopper now that you feel, or projected, that you feel are going to total up to 49,000?
I have a quote for Station 5.
You have a what?
A quote on my desk for Station 5 for a repair there. I have a quote on my desk for Station 9. Between the two of those, it's about $7,000. I'm waiting for a quote on Station 1, We had the vendor go out to correct a couple of things that needed to be done per the state. And when the vendor went there, they found one of the boilers out on an emergency lockout, so we had to shut it down. So I'm waiting for a quote on that. I honestly couldn't even begin to guess how much something like that is going to cost, but we're just trying to make sure that we're not waiting, to have heat fixed in a building and now it's, 20 degrees and the pipes are going to freeze. We want to make sure that we have the spending authority and permission to move forward.
Okay, so essentially this is, spending authority up to another 30,000.
Correct.
Okay. And I think you pretty much explained which buildings you anticipate expenses on. Are there any other buildings that you anticipate expenses on?
All of them. That's just
Yeah.
today. So,
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions for members of the council? Questions for members of the public? Questions for members of the public? Thank you, Chrissy. The final item that we'll have is bid 2021-172, State of Rhode Island Ice Melt Products. Chrissy, I was reading my notes when I asked you in the last one. Oh, this is a state, this is the one I was reading my notes on. So this was updated, and the reason why it's coming to us October 1st, and I didn't get to talk to you, but I did get the answer. The reason why it's coming to us October 1st, and like after October 1st, I should say, is we had to wait for the state to get the contract.
correct. And
So-
I believe it was the 25th of October when they finally posted their information.
So they posted it on the 25th of October. As soon as you saw it, we jumped on top of that. So
Right.
we're getting the same pricing as the state, which obviously purchases a lot.
Yes.
So saves us. Got it. So, thank you. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Members of the council? Yeah, absolutely. Councilman Foley.
The Farmer's Almanac will give us a projection of what they anticipate, but you must have some forecast for this winter. What are they forecasting?
I wish we did. We don't. We
nothing.
don't. We just try to be as
No hope,
prepared as
huh?
possible.
I was trying. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Members of the public. Members of the public. Sorry, Councilman. Thank you. That concludes discussion on the PCR 14821. May I have a motion?
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all very much. We'll now turn to the Finance Committee agenda. May I have an acceptance for the minutes of the committee meeting held on November 1st?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 2 is PCR 147-21. I will read the full heading this one time and we'll know from then on. A resolution authorizing the city of Warwick to issue not to exceed $26,960,000 general obligation bonds, notes, and other evidences of indebtedness to finance the construction, renovation, improvement, altercation, repair, refurnishing, and equipment of schools and school facilities throughout the city, and all attendant expenses included but not limited to engineering and architectural costs, subject to approval of state housing aid at the reimbursement rate or state share ratio of not less than 35% at the time of the issuance. Is there anyone here to speak on this bond behalf? Mr. Schaefer, good evening.
Thank you. And I also, after I'm finished, Mr. Gothberg from the school department is here too.
Thank you.
But just let me run through you have a communication from me. And this resolution does really two things. First of all, it gives the city the authority to issue the remaining of the $40 million in bonds which were approved in November of 2018. And it also gives the city the authority to advance funds from the general fund until we issue those bonds. And we're down to just around $1 million, so that may happen. Assuming you approve this, my guess is we will not close on getting the proceeds until early February. That's from our financial advisor. It might be late in January. So it does two things. And remember, just the history of this is November of 2018, the voters approved $40 million in school bonds. 2 years later, in November of 2020, they approved another $56 million in school bonds. What this resolution does is, and you passed two previous resolutions, this gives the city the authority to issue the rest of the $40 million in bonds. Now, some of the projects that are listed that they're planning to do were contemplated to come from the $56 million, but our bond counsel has given us firm guidance that the use is interchangeable. So, and we believe that the rest of this 40 million will get us through another year. If it's 9 months, we'll be back to you again to ask for authority to issue some of the 56 million. It could be longer. It depends upon how fast they get the design work done, how fast they approve projects, how fast the money goes out the door. So this basically is cleans our books up, issues the rest of the $40 million, and gives us the authority, the treasurer and the mayor, and to advance money from the general fund until we issue these bonds. So the school building committee and the school committee have approved already $29 million in projects. Steve has ready before them to somewhere a little over 24 million for approval at the beginning of the winter in January, I think. So that's 56. That's about $53 million in total projects. We're going for the full this 12 million that was already issued, 13 million plus this 26 million, 40 million. So if they get everything done very promptly, they would run out of money, in a year from now. But and we'll be back to you if that happens. Just to look at the table on the last page, and then I'll turn it over to Steve, because when I went through this with the mayor, if you look at some of the approved project list, for example, he said to me, well, why are we spending $300,000 on Drum Rock School? Because that's being torn down. They're not going to spend $300,000. That's going to be reallocated. They haven't gotten to that yet. And I think also the Pilgrim and Tollgate, there's going to be some reallocation. But the rest of the projects here are from the list that Steve has presented to the building committee, and he's ready and able to respond to any of your questions, and you may have some questions for me as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shaver. Did you want to follow up, or did you want to wait for questions? Will do. Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Mr. President, any questions from you?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to say thank you to the school committee that is here today, the school administration, to come here this evening. I spoke to the superintendent. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it this evening, but she reached out to me last week to let me know. I think she'd rather be here than where she's at. And I just want to thank Mr. Schaefer. He provided us with a detailed explanation on this. Again, these are funds that the voters approved. This is the majority of this is coming from that $40 million bond that was approved by the city council and approved by the citizens in that election. So this is to keep the funding going, as Mr. Schaefer mentioned and is in his report here. By the end of October, there was about 1.4 million in cash left, so they do need the next disbursement of these funds. We, as a city council, have been working with the school administration and the school committee. They have a great website that keeps everything up to date on the projects that they're doing, that they're proposing, that's available for the public to look at as well. I think it's a real good relationship. It's much needed, and everybody knows this. If they've been to the schools, it's for the people that work there, the students, the parents. It's a great investment. This is the next step, getting these funds out there so these projects can continue. And we do expect a number of projects to move forward, and then they'll be back to us in a year, maybe a year and a half for the next round for additional funding, again, for money that has been voted on by the taxpayers here in Warwick. So this has my full support, and I just want to thank all the people that are involved in this, the school committee, the school administration, for coming here today, and the administration for putting together this presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilman Gebhardt.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for being here. So the finance director talked about this table at the end not being 100% current. When do you anticipate having sort of more drilled in list of the projects you're looking to complete?
We have everything ready to go for next year out of both bonds. I can go through it quickly if you'd like, let you know. So for next year, out of the $40 million bond, we have ADA upgrades at Hvac, Norwood, Park, Scott, and Sherman. Also at Windman. Windman will be doing quite a large amount of work. Out of the $56 million bond, we're looking at some site work at Francis, Greenwood. We're also looking at mechanical work at Greenwood, site work at Park, Scott, Sherman. Sherman, as I'm sure most of you are aware, with the mold issue that we have going on there, we're doing everything that's available to be done out of the bond work to be done. So that's not only the ADA work, we've already done the roof there. We have a playground, we have the HVAC project, the site work project, some minor electrical to upgrade outlets in the classrooms, and some plumbing work. We also have, we're going to have to upgrade the service there to handle the HVAC project. So we have quite a bit of work. And at Windman, we also have the ADA roof. The HVAC project, that's where we moved the money from Pilgrim. We brought that to you last year to Windman, so that HVAC project will start this coming summer.
Okay, great. And is the website that the council president talked about up to date, or the document that you're?
Right now, we're playing a little bit of catch up with the website, but that should be up. My office coordinator is taking a month off, so I will try and get that together, but we are a little behind the 8 ball on that.
Okay, and the document that you're reading from, are you able to distribute that to the council people?
I can distribute that, that's correct.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions from members of the committee?
Oh, I have one.
Yes, please, Councilman Gebhardt.
I know on these bond funds, sometimes the issue is just throughput, right? How much work can we actually get done and manage? So of the projects that you outlined that you're targeting, level of confidence on?
Well, as we know, we have supply chain issues. As an example, last year we had 5 roofs that were projected to be done, but because of supply chain issues, specifically on roofing insulation, I think Councilman Lattiser is quite aware of this. We had to postpone 2 roofs until this coming summer, but we have already put them back out to bid, rebid them, and they will be signing the contracts and putting the POs forward within the next 2 weeks, I would think. So they're ready to go. The other big issue is the HVAC projects we have going forward. We don't know delivery dates, supply chain issues. We're counting on that we can do it. Can we do it? Yes, if the equipment and material can be purchased and delivered on time. We're planning to go. We want the money in place to go, but I cannot guarantee that.
Okay,
That would be out of our control.
Okay. One more question. I know as part of building projects for this year, I don't know if this falls under building or another area, but you were testing some solar implementations at various school buildings. Are those on track, or where do those stand, and are you planning to test any more?
That really is not under me. That's not under the bond. I handle mostly the bond work. There may be somebody else who can speak to that.
I don't want to take us off track.
Okay,
You can,
all right.
that could be a follow-up.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. If you wouldn't mind, just come up, identify yourself, and make the statement public.
I'm sorry, Dave Testa, school committee member. As far as the solar project are concerned, we haven't committed to any specific project. There was just a formality to get the process started. So that's the last vote we took. So if it does happen, we have to coordinate with the city anyway, because you own your buildings, not ours. That's still a ways away with a list of actual solar projects.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Testa. Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions from members of the committee? Questions from members of the council? Councilman Lattisaw.
I think now it's working. Thank you. Okay, it's all good. Mr. Gottberg, first I want to just start off by commending you as well as all the staff.
There's just a microphone being changed out right now. Batteries. Got it. Thank you. Councilman, you have the floor when you're ready.
I was ready, the mic wasn't. But anyways, so as I started to say, I just want to take a moment to commend you and the administration and the staff that was responsible for that transition from Sherman to Gorton School. I personally think everyone did a very good job in a very short period of time to make that all occur. I actually had a tour of the building with the superintendent as well as Principal McElroy, and I was very impressed. The building is spotless. People were happy. The classrooms were vibrant, and I had minimal, let's say, not positive conversations with a few of my constituents, but when those conversations were over, I think they were pretty well satisfied. So you all did a really good job, and kudos to the superintendent and the assistant superintendent. Their transparency has really been a breath of fresh air, and it's nice to be able to get answers to questions when I have them. Having said that, you certainly can remember back in the day when I wasn't always so positive. We certainly had our share of discussions. And I must say, the last time you had come to the council for additional drawdowns, I had asked questions about, were you on time, were you on budget, have you reached all the goals that you had presented to us, et cetera, which was very much a strong suggestion of this council back then. And the answer was that you had. And my question would be the same. So from that point, or from that drawdown, this drawdown, tell us about where you are with your goals of your punch list items and where you are in a timely manner, and especially important, are you on budget collectively?
As far as projects, everything we've started, we are either almost complete or have completed. This year has been especially hard, I think, as you know, with the supply chain issues. We ran against the wall at the very end of the summer. We ran into even small items like FRP, fiberglass reinforced panels, that came in the last week, and we really struggled to finish on time. But it wasn't because of coordination issues or contractors issues. It really was supply chain. So that hurt us, and that's where we lost those 3 days in those 5 buildings. As far as budget, we are every school, and we track by school. Every school at this point is under budget. In total, there are some projects been made a little over. We had to go into contingency, but as we keep the monies within the school, everything is under budget. If you look at the one that's got the least, we're like 7,000 under budget. Others were $500,000, but it really depends in when we bid, how we bid, and how it comes in. But we are in good shape and on time.
And those schools that you're under budget on, those numbers you'll be able to roll over into other projects.
We can do that, but my big concern, I'm in discussion with Rhode and the school building authority on this, is that we know as we move forward with the HVAC projects, when we did the budgets, we factored in escalation, certain percentage a year. We increased the square footage costs because we knew initially that they'd be a little bit higher. But if we look at what we did with Lippert last year, Lippett's came in way over budget, and that's because of the supply chain issues. So I'm hoping that in discussions with Rhode that we can take the funding that we have that we're under budget on and apply that to other projects as we move forward. Because we originally had planned to do additional projects, but I think we may have to apply those funds to complete the projects that we have scheduled ahead.
And I certainly would hope that Rhode would recognize the supply chain problem that you're having in getting some of those projects, I should say, in not being able to get some of those materials to complete those projects. And I certainly can give you total support on that roofing item that you mentioned. Several weeks ago, I tried to get a price on foam for a project. Never mind, you can't get the material. They wouldn't even quote a price.
No, they won't.
Because they had no idea when they were going to get the product. And when they did get it, it's priced at point of delivery. So I can appreciate some of those challenges that not just you have, but our folks in DPW and water department, et cetera, et cetera.
Everybody has it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any further questions from members of the council? I see that, Mr. Director Schaefer, you have a comment you'd like to make? Oh, okay, thank you. Are there any questions from members of the public? Any questions or comments from members of the public on PCR 147-21? Mr. Schaefer.
There it goes. I mentioned we're required under state law to issue these bonds through the Rhode Island Health and Education Building Corporation. And you'll recall, Chairman, we did a master lease deal 2 months ago. We went out to bid. We got the lowest interest rate, and that's who we selected. Now, I have a lot of respect for this organization, but they do not like to do competitive sales for whatever reason. And our charter says when we issue bonds, when it's in the city's name, we go out to competitive bid. So I'll be making a case to them that that's the way we should be doing this deal. And they may have some good reasons why we shouldn't do it in this case. I don't know what they would be. If you're doing a refunding, which is very complicated, then I would certainly agree with them. But it could be that I'll come back to you a month from now after talking to the mayor and ask for a resolution of support to go to competitive bid. May not be an issue at all. I just don't know. But I don't want to surprise you a month or 2 months from now.
All right, understood. Thank you so much. Thanks for putting that on record with the new information. May I ask for a motion?
Favorable action?
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Yes, it did. The time is now 5:55 PM, and the Finance Committee is closed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next committee will meet at 6 o'clock is the Ordinance Committee.
So ordinance will convene at 6:10 PM. First on the agenda is acceptance of minutes from the meeting held on November 1st, 2021. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next, we have PCO 32-21, an ordinance in regards to the placement of no parking either side signs on the entire roadway of Angle Court and on Narragansett Bay Avenue from Angle Court to Warwick Neck Avenue. This is second passage. This is Councilman Lattiser.
Thank you, Chairman. I would respectfully request favorable action. As you know from the last meeting, it was accompanied by an approved traffic study. So once again, request favorable action.
Any comments and questions from members of the committee? Any comments or questions from members of the council? Any comments or questions from members of the public? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
Move favorable action for second passage.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Next, we have PCO 15-19 Sub A, an ordinance regarding health insurance for city employees. This would be first passage as amended. Councilman Lattiser.
Hold to December 6th.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
If I may, respectfully, understanding that the sponsor has to hold, I have some document that was shared with the council that I would like to read into record, and with the understanding that this was docketed back in 2019, it's been 2 years, and if, with your permission, I'd like to read the memo into the record.
If it's the November 2nd memo, it's already in the record. If it's
It is in
something
the-
else, though, then it's not.
No, then that is the document I was going to read. So I respectfully request from the sponsor a vote on this going on the information supplied from November 2nd.
Mr. Chairman, I am waiting for additional information. And again, as the sponsor, I respectfully request a hold till December 6th.
Mr. Chairman, I'm fine if the sponsor would like to continue to hold. I'm good with that. Thank you.
All right, request by the sponsor to hold till December 6th. And do we have a motion?
Move to hold to December 6th.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Next is PCO 9-21, an ordinance requiring collective bargaining agreement documentation to be submitted to the city council at least 30 days prior to ratification. This is Councilman Lattiser. It would be first passage.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'd like to start off by saying with the recent contracts that we've just had before us with police and municipal workers, that contract, we had plenty of time to review the contract, to research, to ask questions, et cetera. And kudos to the council president for affording us that time, as well as the mayor for getting the information to the council. But that hasn't always been the case. I'm sure there's some of my colleagues on the council, some actually, Councilwoman Travis, been sitting here much longer than any of us, can remember getting proposed contracts or contracts for our ratification literally days before they were to be voted on. We all know that the current mayor isn't going to be here forever. We all know that us sitting here now are not going to be here forever. And it just makes sense to me that, particularly for the benefit of the members of this council that come after us, that we put it in stone that they have ample time to review, ask questions, research, consider, compare contract to contract to contract. And that's not something that we all have the ability to do for time constraints in our day-to-day lives, our business lives, our professional careers, et cetera. So it would make sense to me that, particularly for people that come after us, as well as those of us that are sitting here, that we have a solid guideline that would require any collective bargaining agreement to come before the city council 30 days prior to ratifying it. And with that said, Mr. Chairman, I would respectfully request favorable action.
Any comments or questions from members of the committee? Councilman Riggs.
Thank you. I agree with the intent of this legislation. I think that it really is a best practice, as demonstrated by this last round of contract ratifications, that when we have a sufficient period of time to review the contract, when it's not a matter of being presented with it just a few days ahead of time, that's a more transparent process. It's a better review process. And when we have that better process in place, then questions get answered beforehand instead of potential last-minute issues coming up at the meeting itself. So I do think that the principle of 30 days before ratification, it's a good principle. I'm not sure if a full 30 days may be necessary, so I would be interested in hearing what other members of this council think as to what time frame is reasonable. I certainly think that 30 days is enough time, but I'm not opposed to having it be a shorter period of time either. However, I do think that it's a good idea to have drafted into our ordinances a provision that no, it would not be reasonable to present to the council with contracts just a few days before and then expect that everyone is able to get through the dozens and dozens of pages of legal writing and ask questions and receive answers. I think that having a sufficient period of time is important. I would also say that perhaps amending that last clause, so the amendment reads, at least 30 days prior to ratification of a collective bargaining agreement by the City Council, the mayor shall submit to each member of the City Council the contract, fiscal note, and any other related documentation. I think that perhaps that last clause of any other related documentation could be clarified, such as any other related documentation that is required to be presented or that is intended to be presented at the time of ratification, just to clarify exactly what other related documentation would or wouldn't include. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from members of the committee? Any questions or comments from members of the council?
I have one.
Council President McAllister.
Thank you very much. I talked to Councilman Lannister about this a while ago. I think it originally was 60 days, and I wasn't comfortable with that, and I believe he put in 30 days on that. One of the reasons that I think we talked about this is Now there is the continuing contracts, the evergreen contracts. So union people won't be, if a contract ends on July 1st, they're still covered until the next contract is up there. So I do think that kind of takes a little bit of the pressure off on getting the contracts done. We do need time as part-time legislators to look into these and ask our questions and have our meetings on these, and that does take some time. So I haven't been on the council where there was this real quick turnaround. The last one, I believe we all had significant time to review that, but I understand where Councilman Lattiser is coming from moving forward. He wants to get something on the books for that. 30 days, I think, of things in council meetings. So we have council meetings every 2 weeks. So really that would be if an administration and a union agree to a TA and they, on a Monday of a council meeting, it would be a month where we would have to hear, it would be 2 council meetings away. We could always do a special meeting, of course, as well. So I like to have a flexibility of timing. There's always some things that pop up that you might need to do with contracts. I think the pressure is a little bit off now because of the evergreen contracts continuing that. So I don't want to say I'm opposed to 30 days. I do think there's got to be, common sense says you need time to break these down, have the meetings. When I look at these, I meet with the administration, I meet with the union members, I talk to different people to really dive into this. That takes time. It takes at least 2 weeks. Minimum, I would say that it takes 2 weeks. By the time you get it, you read it a couple of times, set up your meetings and everything like that. So I do think that 30 days is a good target date. I kind of agree with Councilman Ricks that, I could go 15 days, a little shorter just to give it flexible, a minimum of 15 days, something like that. But I'm interested to hear from my colleagues on the 30 days. I do, the spirit of this, I understand and I agree with, and, just trying to figure out what the right number is. And I think it's, like I said, we're right in the ballpark that, I wouldn't push it out further. People want to know what their agreements are going to be. These contracts have huge implications on not only the taxpayers, but the individuals working in those unions as well. So we owe it to them to do our due diligence and move these things forward, vote them up or down on the merits of the contract. So I'm kind of thinking out loud right here, but I just wanted to get my thoughts out there for the record and look forward to hearing from my colleagues. Thank you.
Councilman Howe?
Thank you, Councilman. I'd like to follow up by saying I thank the council president for reaching out to Councilman Lattiser, and I thank Councilman Lattiser for, willing to discuss. I originally, before the words that the council president spoke, was against setting a timeline, because quite honestly, I know that I'm thinking on the other side where 2 years ago we had a contract in our hands for 30 days, and there was a great effort to stall it. And key words are used, and I don't like politicizing contracts that are done in good faith, and that's what collective bargaining is, good faith between 2 parties. Our job on the council is simply to vote up and down. And I remember hearing key words being used such as thuggery and bullies and, and then of course we hear things like, you don't understand, we can't understand the contract, even though we read the contract and it was in our hands for 30 days. It's obviously, you don't understand the contract and its wording and this, that, the other. And that's the kind of, so I was just seeing this as another, quite honestly, insult where, I would not vote on a contract that I had in my hands for 1 day. I would not vote on a contract that I had in my hands for 2 days. I would want the time to do diligence. And to me, this was a hand-holding, respectfully, my initial thinking of it, this was a hand-holding ordinance, basically telling me that we're just doing this to ensure that, you're going to do the job that you were elected to do, which is what I take a lot of pride in doing. So I took this as just a continuation of the words and the ridiculousness that I experienced, the great stall tactics of the great as one speaker said, Banana Republic Rebellion of the Rogue 5 of 2019. So I like what the council president, I like what you said. I personally would never vote on a contract contrary to what some might think that has been in my hands for 1 or 2 days. I would say shame on any administration that presents to this honorable body a contract that has only 1 or 2 days before it needs to be ratified. The council president, I thank you for bringing the realization of this that the stress is off our shoulders, if you will. The time limits are off our shoulders. But I would also, this is something that does deserve to be looked at, discussed, and I don't know of any council person that'll get a contract with 1 day and say, yeah, I have no problem voting on this. I just don't see it. We do our due diligence. I know once the contract is voted on, I get a phone call I reach out and I get phone calls from the respected and the negotiating parties, and any questions I have that arise over that time. But I will also I would be fine with the 14 days because I do want to give the council president and this council, as the president recommended, I want to give this body the time to go ahead and schedule, if needed, a special meeting. I also want to give the people who on good faith negotiated, and that includes the administration on behalf of the city and the collective bargaining authorities on behalf of the employees, the courtesy of passing a negotiated, approved contract. So I would be willing, like you said, Mr. President, you asked for input. I would be fine with 14 days and to give you the time to go ahead and schedule, understanding that that's the minimal, understanding it could go like with this last contract cycle. We waited, I think we had one of the bargaining units in our hands for about 4 or 5 months before we voted on it. So thank you for the input, and so I'm flexible on this too. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Chairman, may I comment, please?
Sure.
So I apologize, Councilman Howe, if you took offense for whatever reason to this ordinance. I thought I had made my rationale pretty clear in the beginning. And secondly, I did not say a day or two. I believe I said a matter of days. So I don't want it to be construed as my stating we get a contract a day or two before we vote. This isn't about us all the time. This isn't something that is being addressed as a direct conflict with the members of the council or any of the bargaining groups. This is about future elected officials as well, and ensuring that they're afforded an opportune time or a reasonable amount of time put in writing to be able to review these contracts. You're right. These contracts are very lengthy. They're filled with a lot of legalese information that I think even for some attorneys may be difficult to, wrap your hands around at a quick blush. I know certainly for a lay person like me, I find the content of a lot of those contracts take a significant amount of time to look at, and also to go back several contracts to compare what's taken place. And in several contracts, we could be looking at going back 6, maybe 9 years to see what took place. And speaking for myself, I would like to have that necessary time to be able to do that if need be. So again, there was no insults meant for anyone on the council now or yesterday, or certainly to none of the bargaining groups or the administration. We don't have a guideline in place. And one of the most important things that we do is vote up or down on the contracts. I have no problem with going to 14 days if that is the consensus. I still think 30 would be more appropriate, but I also understand in the spirit of compromise that sometimes that's what we have to do. So I would have no problem if the general consensus is to amend this to 14 days. Thank you.
Alrighty, any other members of the council wish to speak? And so, my own thoughts, 14 days sounds like it makes sense. We don't want,
No, I have my hand up. That's okay. You can talk.
well, I'll come back to you then, Councilwoman Travis, sorry. 14 days makes sense as long as it's enough. We don't want a mayor potentially holding hostage or trying to jerk us around, but we also don't want the council to do the same. And that last line could be used to do that, the whole other related documents. The council member could rightly argue that that means something very broad and basically result in dragging feet. So I would propose alternative language such as removing other related documents with and replacing it with documentation required or intended to be presented as part of the ratification process. That way, documentation required or intended to be presented as part of the ratification process.
I'm okay with that.
And that should encompass anything I assume you envisioned, while at the same time not empowering anyone, be it on this council or down the line, to have new ways of dragging feet other than ones that are actually like reasonable, like fiscal note, et cetera. And Councilwoman Travis, did you have a comment? Sorry.
No, I was just going to mention, I know Councilman Lattisaw brought up, I've been here a long time, which I have. But when I first got here, we didn't even do ratification. The contracts were done by the mayor and the unions, and, that was what it was. But now, I think it's good that we have to look at them, and it's important. I'm agreeable for if it's 14 to 30, whatever you want to do, I think that's good. I don't want it to be prolonged too long, that makes it worse. But I think it was good that we got to that point that we can actually look at it, because before it was just like a rubber stamp. They did the negotiations. None of us here sitting on these benches, the mayor, so we can't do anything about it other than ask questions and try to get answers. So I just wanted to clear that up. When I started, we didn't do ratification, so we came a long way.
Thank you.
Any other members of the council wish to speak? Any members of the public wish to speak? That being the case, I'd like to make a motion to amend the ordinance to replace other related documents with documentation required or intended to be presented as part of the ratification process.
Second.
Motion made and seconded.
Mr. Chairman, also the 14 days.
Yep. And then also to add in the change from 30 days to 14 days. So everywhere where 30 days appears, both as a numeral and spelled out, would be replaced with 14, the numeral, and as spelled out.
Second.
So motion made and seconded. Any members of the committee wish to speak on the proposed amendment? Besides what was already said, obviously. Do any members of the council wish to speak on the proposed amendment? Members of the public? Seeing none, do we have a vote on the motion?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Or
We already did. We led with
did
it.
on the amendment. But
This is just the amendment. We haven't voted on the whole thing as amended. So now as presented, we have an amended proposed ordinance. Does any members of the council wish to speak? Members of the committee too? Skipped you. Members of the public? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
Move favorable action as amended.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Next, we have an ordinance. Oh, that's a lie. Next, we have PCO 3621, an ordinance to prohibit parking on either side of Pender Avenue from pole number 12 to the dead end. This is Councilman Lattiser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, I do have a traffic study recommending favorable action. This is, it's a really difficult length of road. It's not that long a road, and it's kind of like a dead end. And you park one vehicle on that road, and you're not getting any type of emergency response down that street. There's not a lot of homes on that road, but nonetheless, the folks that do live on that road would not be able to, well, it would certainly be very difficult to get emergency response. And it has been a situation in the past, from what I understand. So with that said, I did receive favorable action, favorable reply from the police department on the traffic study, and I would request favorable action.
Any questions or comments from members of the committee? Any questions or comments from members of the council? Any questions or comments from the public? And yeah, on my own experience with these kind of traffic studies, when it comes to parking, the police are usually pretty strict about what they'll deem approved for no parking on both sides. So if they've deemed it worthy, it must be actually pretty serious. So do we have a motion?
Move favorable action.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Ordinance will end at 6:36 PM, unless Lynn tells me I forgot something. She said we're done.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next committee will be the Public Safety Committee.
Good evening. Public safety comes to order at 6:38. First order of business is acceptance of minutes from the November 1st meeting. Have a motion?
Move to accept.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
First item is PCR 143-21, resolution relative to claim Russell Reese. Anyone on the committee? Any questions on this? I do have some new information. I know the council president reached out to Mr. Reese in regards to this, and his phone call was not returned. Mr. Reese did come and speak to our clerk. I spoke to the clerk. She reached out to him again because the issue was the claim. On his claim form, he states he's going to his insurance company. We wanted clarification whether he gotten any reimbursement. The clerk reached out to him, left a message, and have not heard back. So based on that, I'm looking for a motion for denial because we're not going to double pay a claimant until we know he's gotten no reimbursement from insurance. All right, so anyone on the committee wanting to speak on this claim? Anyone on the council? Anyone from the, oh, you do.
Sorry, I'll go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'll just briefly say, I think that the chairman summed it up well. If the claimant isn't going to be producing that information that's requested, then it's not the burden of this committee to do their job for them.
Anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item? I am looking for a motion to deny.
Move to deny.
Second.
Unfavorable, I'm sorry, the motion is for unfavorable action.
Move unfavorable action.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next item is PCR 144-21, resolution relative to claims June Giallo. And we have updated information on that claim also. Do we have anyone on the committee who wishes to speak? Councilman Ricks.
Thank you, Chairman. And I believe that Ms. Jiao, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, is here as well. She is stepping up to the podium. So I would yield my comments to hear her comments first, if that pleases the committee.
We okay with that? Yes. All right. Yes, please.
All right. Hi, everyone. Good evening.
Can
My
you need to be closer to the mic for us.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Better? Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is June. I'm here to give you some more information about the claim that I filed with the city of Warwick when my car was damaged by 2 separate softballs while I was parked at O'Hara Field earlier this summer. I prepared a PowerPoint which was sent around to you that has images, an aerial image of where I was parked on the field. I was down the left line of the field behind the fenced area at the intersection of Wade and Burr Street. There was a adult softball field occurring. I was not there to watch the game. I was actually in the area parked because I was walking around the neighborhood and wanted to go to the park that was across the street. I recently went back to take photos of the area and feel like there is lack of fencing and netting to ensure baseline public safety at this field. So I wanted to kind of refute the denial for the claim, because if the city owns and maintains this field, I feel like there should be more signage. The only signs that were there were one for no public urination, and I feel like if there was a sign there, if there was a sign there, it should be for you assume the risk by parking here instead of no public urination or defecation. There's parts of the fence that are missing. The fence is short. It's my height. It's about 5'5". When you know that when adults are playing softball, that the balls will definitely go over that field. In addition, last year in 2019, all 30 MLB baseball fields have put up additional netting based on people getting injured from foul baseballs, and I feel like or the city of Warwick should take a similar approach and at least put up some additional netting, because I know the area behind the field is a neighborhood, and while I was parked and taking these photos, there were kids walking their dogs and residents taking morning walks. So I'm actually glad that both softballs hit my car instead of hurting someone, because at that point you would be paying for someone's medical bills or my medical bills. I also reached out to the softball league manager, Bob Berard, and he says that he pays the rec department a liability insurance. So I'm not sure why the claim was denied if the city hasn't done anything to reach out to Bob or the recs department to see what kind of insurance they have and if the damage done to my car is covered for that, because the softball league pays for liability insurance already. So I'm also amending my claim amount to the lowest amount based on all the quotes that I received. So it's going to be a total of $975 instead of the $1,613.87 that I originally asked for in my claim. At the end of this, really, it's not about the money as long as someone makes sure that field is safe for residents. That's honestly all I care about. Because at the end of the day, I'm privileged enough to put this claim with my insurance and pay for my windshield and move on. But if this is a public safety committee, the baseline safety of the residents that live in that area or people that frequent that park should be taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to first thank you for coming. I've been the chair of the Public Safety Committee since January, and you are the first person, of my recollection, who has come to present their case. And I appreciate the effort. I want you to know that. Thank you. Any other members of the committee? Councilman Ricks.
Thank you. I think that Ms. Giao did an excellent job presenting. I did reach out to her since the last meeting, and we communicated to ensure that she was providing the either invoice and 2 estimates or 3 estimates for each element of the claim, as there are 3 pieces here. The first one being towing, which the invoice, and we understand that when someone gets their car towed, that's not a situation where normally one shops around, but the city council general protocol here is to get 3 either invoice and 2 estimates or 3 estimates. And the lowest of the 3 presented was lower than the 160 at 125. So I see that that is part of the claim, along with windshield repair of $450. That reflects a reduced amount from the original because there was a $450 deductible, a $450 deductible from the auto insurance company, which covered the amount greater than $450. And then there was also 2 other estimates in addition to the invoice. And then 3 estimates were presented as to the dent repair. The dent repair, it's my understanding that that has not been conducted as, and that's the dent repair as to the second softball that hit inside about 45 minutes, more or less. But that's cosmetic. However, I do see this as a valid part of a claim because regardless of whether one chooses not to conduct that sort of repair, the whole purpose of our civil system here is to make people whole as to the damage that was incurred. And the lowest of the 3 estimates was $400. So getting on to, I think, what other members of this city council were expressing earlier, concerns that the last meeting, I know that some concerns had been expressed regarding the city warning itself out of this potential liability. So right off the bat, no pun intended, I'd like to point out, as Ms. Giao did, that there was no warning sign on that fence. So it's not a case where the city effectively was warning itself out of potential liability. There was no warning. But beyond that, as a lawyer, this is one of those classic law school discussions that you have in first year torts class, where you learn that there are an awful lot of garages out there, awful lot of parking lots and the like, where someone drives in, you take the ticket, you have some language on the back of the ticket that says the owner of this parking lot, parking garage is not responsible for any damage. And then what ends up happening is most of the time, most people, when there's damage done to their vehicle, they're looking at that ticket and saying to themselves, well, shoot, I'm out of luck. I was warned that the owner of this property is not responsible, and so I'm not going to seek a claim. Well, that's not how it works. You can't just, in all situations, put up a sign and say, I'm not liable. No. Sometimes that works, but most of the time, not so much, especially when we're talking about a situation like here where you have a parking lot right next to a softball field, and we know that it's a hazard because we have 2 softballs flying over that fence in the space of about 45 minutes doing damage. We also know that flying softballs or baseballs, it's a classic example of a hazard for property damage or bodily injury. That's why, and this is actually a classic law school example. I'm impressed that Ms. Zhao found this on her own, that Major League Baseball has recently had rules or otherwise implemented at all of the fields expanded netting. So expanded netting, it's a simple solution, and unfortunately, it takes accidents oftentimes for that solution to be implemented. But if, for example, and I'm making these numbers up, if $1,000 of netting ends up preventing over the lifetime of that netting $10,000 of property damage or bodily injury or more, then yeah, it should be the responsibility of the owner of that premises to put up that netting, because it's reasonable to spend a little to save other people a lot. So I think that really the city should be responsible for putting up netting. The city, or alternatively, if the city doesn't want to put up netting, maybe the city needs to move those parking spaces to a place where it's not encouraging people to park, where the parked vehicles are going to get slammed by softballs doing serious damage. There are multiple solutions out there, but having these parking spaces right next to where they're going to get slammed by softballs, unfortunately, I see that as a classic example of negligence right there. And the fact that 2 softballs hit within the space of about 45 minutes, that's about as clear a situation as I could imagine. So I know that the city council in the past has been reluctant to pay out on these types of claims, but if we're going to stop these situations going forward, as well as do right by the folks who are being affected by these conditions, such as Ms. Zhao, who's in front of us, then let's go ahead, make her whole as to the $975 claim that she presented relative to $125 reimbursement for the towing, $450 reimbursement for the windshield repair, and $400 as to the dent repair. I would yield the floor.
Thank you. Let me just explain the process tonight. The committee is we're listening, we're going to make a vote. Then this claim will go in front of the entire city council for a second vote, just so you know.
Okay.
Anyone else on the committee wish to speak? Members of the council, I'm gonna go in order. Councilwoman Travis, show her hand first.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Father of Harrowfields in my ward, and as everyone knows, I've been in that area for over 60-something years. And the committee, as far as council, I was chairman of public safety for over 20 years. And we never paid a claim for a ball hitting a car at Father O'Hara's field. And it was for a lot of reasons. There was time when there was a sign up there. No, signs have been stolen. I just said it recently. The boat ramp signs were all stolen with the rules. We had signs up there, park at your own risk. And along the fence, now she was parked in the right spot. She was parked in the parking lot. But along the fence, people parked there for the ball games all the time. And it says right there on those signs, no parking on either side. But they still park there at their own risk because they're parking first where it says no parking. And second, if a ball hits you, it's our fault that you parked there. You parked in the wrong place. Now, she stated she wasn't there for the ball game. But another factor is people park in that parking lot to avoid paying to go to the beach. The beach fees were in effect. And we had a big problem with that this year. People parking in that ball field and walking over to the beach just so they didn't have to pay a beach fee. So there's a lot of reasons, but the fact of the matter is that we never paid that before. We said no to local people whose cars got hit. And I don't think we should set a precedence now by paying for, a ball hitting the car, especially twice. You should have moved the car. But I mean, I won't vote. I'm not going to vote for it. That's for sure.
Can I speak?
I'll get back to you. Thank you. Councilman Sinapi.
You did get it. Solicitor Walsh, what's the minimum or whatever the cap is for the trust to get involved?
2,500.
So my concern is, especially if these claims have come before and been denied, is that this is something I'd feel far more comfortable with the insurer dealing with, because they're the ones that have to deal with the potential consequences, because odds are it's not going to be this low. I don't want to open the floodgates to something and then get us in trouble with the insurer, let alone all the other consequences that come from this. I don't know if it's possible to punt to them, though, at this point.
The threshold is, where it's at, and it'll be reverted back to any other, liability, either, another claim being filed in small claims or elsewhere, but there wouldn't be, the trust will refer it back to us or reject it, most likely.
Because I know personally, my opinion somewhat echoes Donna's in that regard. I do not feel comfortable voting in favor of reimbursing, given the consequences of that going forward. And without the insurer being able to be the one to weigh in here, I wouldn't be able to vote yes.
Councilman Lattiser.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with Councilwoman Travis on this item. Signs are put up for reasons. And if someone chooses to park in an area that they shouldn't be parking in, then they're assuming responsibility. But the other thing that I have a problem with this particular claim is because we got two different stories. On the claim form that was submitted to the city, it says, while sitting in the back of my car, waiting for the Warwick police to file a report, a second softball struck and dented the roof of my car. So based upon that document, I would, for certain, if my car were somewhere that the windshield got smashed, I wouldn't be sitting in the back of the car. I'd be moving the car out of the way. But the other concern is on two other documents in here that was sent to someone in the city. It says, I am looking for a quote to see how much it would be to repair it. I am unavailable to drive to the shop. 30 minutes before another softball struck and shattered my windshield. The first document that was sent to us said, while sitting in the backseat of my car for the Warwick police to file a report, a second softball struck and dented the roof of my car. There is another report on also August 16th. It says, okay, it says it's the same thing. It's basically saying the same thing. So in one happenstance, the softball broke the windshield first, and then while sitting in the back of my car, another softball smashed my roof. But in this other document, it says the softball hit the roof first, and then, hit the roof first, and another softball hit and shattered my windshield. I don't know how you get that confused, but I know for certain if it would have been my car and my windshield or my roof got hit first, I'd be moving that car the hell out of there so it didn't get hit again. You can say there's signs there. Well, they're not really meant to, to be enforced. But when you either smash my windshield or hit my roof, whichever one came first, and you choose not to move that car, that's like, wait a minute, there's not two bites at the apple here before someone other than the city is responsible for what occurred. And there's no way that I'm going to be able to support this for those reasons. And I think also, if my colleagues on the council choose to support this claim, I think you're opening up and setting up and establishing a precedence that will come back to haunt you. I think it's a very dangerous precedence, and I cannot be part of it. Thank you.
Other members of the council? Back to the committee. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to stress that it is 7:01. We have committed to be starting council meetings on time. We have a number of special guests this evening, and we also have a public hearing where we have a stenographer who is on the clock. So I ask that it's the chairman's pleasure, but I ask that this be the last claim that we hear, and then we will pause this committee. Thank you.
Do, sir. We have another comment from a committee member, and then I'll be back to you, miss.
To my colleagues who are concerned about potential precedent or liability here, I would say that the far greater risk of a precedent would be if a judge comes along and sets precedent for us. We can rule on much narrower ground. We can choose our precedent. We put it in a judge's hand. The judge is going to set their own precedent, and a judge is probably going to go along with what's set as precedent at the national level when we're dealing with similar organizations at the national level, as well as state organizations. So here, to clear up any confusion, there was no sign saying "park at your own risk." That sign may have existed at some point in the past, but it was not there, according to the claimant, on the day that this occurred. The claimant returned to the field and took pictures and found two signs, neither of which said "park at your own risk" or anything like that. There was a sign that warned against public urination, and there was a sign that stated some other city ordinances, such as no golfing or the like. There was no sign that said "park at your own risk." I would suggest to the city council that we could set a precedent here that where the city fails to put up a park at your own risk sign, then the city might be on the hook. We're not setting up a precedent that the city is 100% always liable for everything that goes wrong on at our public ball fields. No. We can set a precedent that the city needs to put up signs. Do I think that kind of precedent, that kind of standard as an attorney would actually hold up in court? For all the reasons I said earlier, that would be highly suspect, but we're allowed to set our own precedent here, and it seems that the majority of the city council believes that having a "park at your own risk" sign is important. There was none here. I'll yield.
Members of the public? Miss,
Thank you.
can you
my-
lean in again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
Thank you.
no problem. Again, thank you, because the fact is that there was no sign that says, do not park at your own risk. And if the sign was stolen, I also think that's a city of Warwick problem, because you're not aware of what signs you have or have not on your fences. And that should be the job of the city of Warwick, to make sure that there are appropriate signs placed on this fence. I would also like to give you more details about what happened. I got out of my car to take a walk around the baseball field and that little area right where the gazebos are. Okay, I did not go to the beach. I was not in a swimsuit. I was taking a walk in a public park. Okay, I parked in a public parking lot that happened to have a game. When I got back to my car, my windshield was shattered. No one had left a note. It was definitely a softball based on the pictures. It was right in my line of sight. So if I was sitting in my car and the car was not there to protect me, the ball would have hit my face. I would have had head injuries. And if it was going fast enough to shatter my windshield, I would be in the hospital. I'd probably have a fractured skull at that point, okay? Then I called the City of Warwick non-emergency line to file a police report. Well, I could not move my car because it was shattered in my line of sight. Okay, I started driving when I was 15 years old. This is my first major accident where I wasn't even in the car. I have never had any other accidents in my life. Okay, I did not want to move my car knowing that my windshield was shattered and not knowing what would happen if I moved the car somewhere else. So I sat in my passenger side back seat for the police to come so I could make a report. 45 minutes later, another ball came and hit it dented the roof of my car directly above my head. I heard it. And there was witnesses that saw it and asked me if I was okay, because the ball, if the car was not there, the ball would have hit my head again. I did not move the car because, one, it's illegal to drive a car with a crack that big in your windshield. And two, I didn't know the integrity of the windshield. I didn't know what was going to happen if I moved my car. I was scared. I've never been in an accident like this before. So I left the car where it was. And that's why it was towed from the location, because I can't drive it home.
Take your time.
That's it. That's it. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you again. Any other comments from the public? I'm asking, the recommendation was for unfavorable action or denial in this case. I'm asking for that motion, and then we'll do a vote. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded. All in favor of the unfavorable motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
The committee, Public Safety Committee is suspended at 7:08. We will reconvene after the start of the city council meeting.
Thank you very much. If we could just have the Public Safety's Land Committee and Community Affairs meet real quick. We are just going to move the first motion, which would open up a public hearing. And then we will start the full council meeting. And there is a sign up for public comments, Rule 41 at the podium, if you'd like to sign up.
The City Council Committee on Public Properties, Land Use, and Community Affairs comes to order at 7:09 p.m. We have the acceptance of minutes dated November 1, 2021. Do we have a motion?
Favorable action.
Second.
So moved, seconded, all in favor? Aye. First item on the agenda, PCO 30-21, an ordinance on the abandonment of a portion of Pearl Ave, Montauk Shores Realty LLC, and Shoreline Properties, Inc. Do we have a motion to open public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Correction, a motion to recommend the opening of the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion, seconded. All in favor? Aye. The committee is suspended at 7:10 p.m.
Thank you very much, and we're just going to give the clerk and the solicitor and the councilpeople a second to get back, and then we will call the meeting to order. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I welcome you to the City Council meeting for November 15th, 2021. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. McAllister.
Here.
Mr. Foley.
Here.
Mr. Gephardt.
Here.
Mr. Howe.
Here.
Mr. Lattiser. Mr. McElroy. Mr. Ricks.
Here.
Mr. Snappy. Ms. Travis.
Here.
9 present.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call on Councilman Howe, who is going to introduce our special guests. I'd like them to lead the pledge. Then we'll have, if we can have our special guests lead the pledge, then we'll do the national anthem. Then we'll come back and Councilman Howe has some recognitions to give out. So if I could have our guests this evening come up to the front here and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Council President. I'd like to introduce with, of course, Councilwoman Travis, and I would like to introduce retired Chief Miles Stair to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to call on Councilman Howe.
Thank you, Mr. President. One of the initiatives I know that this council has done under your leadership is identify, and we called on citizens of our city to identify great things in their lives. Sometimes the most difficult challenges in our lives lead to great things. I received a request from a lifelong resident and 30-year veteran of the Warwick Fire Department. He asked as a citizen, he asked as a husband and a father, that we assist him and his family in honoring the personnel of Engines 3 and Rescue 3 in saving his life. Here's the big picture. Miles Stair had a severe heart attack. He has a wife, Kathy, a son, Nathan, and a daughter, Caitlin, who are with him here today because of the everyday job that the fire people do, these firemen and women do. This is a job we expect and pay for the fire department to do. However, when a citizen, a lifelong citizen, becomes so personal, when it becomes so personal to that family, because today standing with Miles and watching this is his family, his daughter, his son, his daughters, his wife. So Miles now has the opportunity, and I want to put this in a personal perspective, in a human perspective. Miles has the opportunity now to walk his daughter down the aisle. That was almost taken from him. So I can't imagine. So this is something that he was meant so much to him, to bring in the firefighters that saved his life, that followed procedures to the letter and went above and beyond and brought him home to his family. So I am happy and honored to join his family today and to join them in recognizing the following officers from Rescue and Engine 3. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, and I believe we have, yes, but I think we'd all like to thank you so much. This is something that you guys do, you men and women do every day, and it's important that we take time to thank you, because this is life and death. We're talking about life and death here, and we are so proud of our Warwick firefighters. We are so proud of our police department. The first responders in this city are outstanding. So I just want to thank you and congratulate you, and I believe we'd all like to shake your hands as well. So thank you very much.
Following firefighters will be honored today by the City Council on behalf of the Stairs family, and a great appreciation from the Stairs family and the City of Warwick and this Warwick Council. Whereas Daniel DeRobio is a lieutenant in the Fire Engine Company 3 for the City of Warwick Fire Department. Whereas on May 14th, 2021, Lieutenant DeRobio and his crew of Engine Company 3 responded to an emergency call for a male having a possible heart attack. Had it not been for the life-saving and skilled response of the responding emergency medical crews, this precious life of a husband, father of 2, may have been lost. Whereas Lieutenant DeRobio and the member of Engine 3 displayed great professional standards and maintained trained emergency procedures when the patient's heart stopped functioning on numerous occasions while en route to the hospital. And whereas Lieutenant DeRobio has been conscientious and trustworthy employee, conscientious and trustworthy, I don't know why I'm not wearing my glasses, employee, and he has dedicated interest and devotion to the job, have had a valuable effort and efficiency in the moral of the Warwick Fire Department. And whereas the men exemplify what men and women of the Warwick firefighter do every day in recognition to all. Now therefore be it resolved, the mayor and the Warwick City Council express our sincere appreciation and thanks to Lieutenant Daniel DeRobio for his distinguished service to the community and highly commend him on the manner of which he's carried out his duties and responsibilities. We also like to recognize Ryan Durson of Fire Company 3. Ryan Durson. I'll read them from you. I'd like also, the City Council would also, John Perry. No, okay. Couldn't make, no worries. Sorry for this. Still learning. Firefighter Lieutenant Kevin Rivette. And Firefighter Rescue Paul Alexander.
Okay, first of all, I want to welcome Miles Stairs here. He's the man of the day, because if they didn't do what they had to do, he wouldn't be with us. And Miles and I grew up together in Oakland Beach, right near with our families. We raised our own new families. And I'm glad to see that you're here and feeling better in this thing. I have nothing but the highest respect for all firefighters, and I thank you for, the service you did, but I think it's hats off to all firefighters for all the things they do, whether it's helping a child maybe choking, go into an accident, or whatever. I know my husband and I got in an accident, but those firefighters were right there. My husband got knocked out, was taken to the emergency room, had to go to ICU. I had a cracked rib, and there was one firefighter that kept coming back and forth just to check to see how I was doing. All firefighters put their line on the duty every day, and they do a great job. But thank you, and thank you for having Miles back with us.
Thank you very much. Next up on the agenda is executive communications. There are none. Next up is general communications. I do have two. First off, I'd like to invite everybody in the city of Warwick tomorrow at 5 p.m. in City Council Hall, the City Hall. There will be a ceremony unveiling the portrait of Mayor Joe Solomon. So all is invited, and that'll be outside the mayor's office tomorrow at 5 p.m. I have one more announcement to make, and I just want to stress this program that is available to small businesses here in Warwick. The city has two programs for small businesses. One is a micro enterprise grant. It's up to $10,000 to help with your rent, your staffing, and your utilities. The requirements are you must be a Warwick business with less than 5 or fewer employees. Then there is also a small business loan, a forgivable loan program that the city is doing as well, and that is for Warwick businesses with 25 or fewer employees. They have to show that they have experienced a 50% revenue loss due to the pandemic. So if anybody is interested in either of these programs, if you're a small business owner, you work in a small business here in Warwick, please reach out. You can call Bill Facenti from the city at 921-9688, or you can reach out to your council person or to the mayor's office, and we'll be happy to connect you with Bill. Again, these are two grant programs, forgivable loans that are available to our small business community, and I'd love to see our businesses here in Warwick take advantage of that. Are there any other council people have anything on the general communications? Councilman Howe.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to all my colleagues on the council and the president for attending the Representative Camille Vella Wilkinson put together a Cold War veterans honor plaque on Veterans Day at Warwick Veterans Park. Speaker Sakarchi, thank you also for coming in attendance and being so supportive, as always, in assisting not only Warwick's veterans, but Rhode Island veterans and assisting in getting the word out there. It was a wonderful day, a beautiful day, and it was so great, especially as a Cold War veteran, to see something like that done. So I can't thank the representative and all involved enough for that. It was a beautiful, beautiful day. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilman Howe. Anything else from general communications? Okay, just to map some things out here, I would like to ask my colleagues, I would like to do the next two items that are on the agenda, which is acceptance of minutes and then public comment. And then I'm going to ask that we move PCO 32-21, that we move PCO 30-21, which is the public hearing up on the agenda. So I'm going to do the next two things first, and then I'll be looking for a vote to move the agenda so we could have that public hearing, as we do have a stenographer here, and we'd like to have that hearing held. So next up is the acceptance of the minutes held on November 1st, 2021. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any objections? Any abstentions? Oh, I need someone to move that for me. Councilman Howe, would you move that?
The exact wording, I'm sorry, Mr. President.
If you could move the acceptance of the minutes for favorable action.
Move for favorable action?
Second by Councilman McElroy. Now, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any objections? Thank you. Thank you, Solicitor Walsh. Next up, and I know I throw a curveball at the clerk. Yeah, if we can get that. Hold on one second. If there's anybody else that'd like to sign up for public comment, there's the list right here. You can do it right now. Going once, going twice. Okay, thank you. At this time is Rule 41. After the general communications and prior to the consent calendar, at each council public hearing meeting, there shall be a 15-minute period during which citizens may comment about Warwick City government issues subject to the following stipulations. The total period of time for public comment shall be 15 minutes. Comments need to be brief in order to allow as many citizens as possible to participate. The topics for comment shall be issues directly affecting city government. City council members will not respond to questions during public comment period. The public comment session will terminate at the expiration of 15 minutes. Waiver of this provision requires unanimous consent. We have two people that have signed up. First up is Rob Cody. Yes, please.
Good evening, council members. Rob Cody, Ward 7. I'm hoping that by now, all of the members of the council have gotten to digest the Rhode Island Department of Education RICAS scores. And once again, Warwick scores are dismal failures. We've actually dropped since 2016, where we were proficient in math. 16% of the students were proficient in mathematics. Now in 2021, 14.5% of the students are proficient. So in other words, 85.5% of the students in the city of Warwick do not meet the minimum proficiency requirement in mathematics. As you all know, 52% of the tax dollars that are collected in Warwick go to the school department. And out of that, 81% of that budget goes to salaries and benefits. So although in the past 5 years, these scores have plummeted, the teachers have gotten raises in the past 5 years. In the private sector, your raises are based on merit and results, but clearly that's not the case here. So we have problems, and we're failing our students, and we're failing our parents, their parents, and we're not setting them up for the future. I've heard in the past in Warwick, and it's pretty common, when we have dismal results like this, there are people that will justify poor behavior and poor results by citing examples of worse behavior and worse results. And I'm waiting for somebody to say, well, at least we're not Pawtucket, because Pawtucket only had a math proficiency of 7.4%. So 92.6% of the math students in the city of Pawtucket do not meet the minimum requirements of education by law. I couldn't even imagine being a math teacher in that city and looking myself in the mirror having such results that poor. You know, in Little League or even in the major leagues, if you don't win a game, they replace the coach. And we need to start looking at what the teachers are doing, because they're failing our system. They point to everything, the schools, the maintenance, everything. And to remind all of you, the city of Warwick, out of 14,000 school districts in the United States, the city of Warwick rates in the top 2 percentile for pay and benefits, salary and benefits. That's just something to think about. We need to get better. we're really not setting our kids up for the future. And the only two words that I would have for the parents and the students in Warwick would be private school. On one other item, I was officially notified this week, or last week, by the Rhode Island Ethics Commission that tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., the former council president will be accepting a plea deal to pay a fine in lieu of prosecution for what took place in Warwick with the fire department and these hidden documents that came to light after I filed my ethics complaint, which, by the way, was unanimously accepted. This was unearthed 3 months ago, and we haven't heard anything from this administration, nothing from the city council, nothing has been docketed to discuss this matter. We paid for this. The legal review clearly states that there was a violation of Rhode Island state law and Supreme Court precedents. It's a public document. Everyone's seen it by now. It's been distributed. It states that the city should seek restitution, and nobody's done anything. Not a word. And I haven't heard anything from the council president. I thought for sure that maybe a public statement would be made by the council president or the finance chairman, because this affects us all. It's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. But not a peep. No public comment. And I was very perplexed on that. But then I looked at the campaign finance reports and the donations, and I figured out why it's been so quiet. This issue is not going away. You need to do something about it, Mr. President. I'd also like to commend Mr. Lattisaw on his ordinance to review any contract. I think it's a prudent thing to do, and as we've seen in the past, we haven't been that prudent when reviewing contracts. And had we been, this would not be an issue today. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Doug. Doug, I'm going to have you, McCusker. Thank you.
Good evening, council members, Mr. President. If I may, I'd like to submit some emails for each of the council members that I had previously sent to each one to include the mayor. And I didn't get a response from anybody until I sent my Councilman Foley a separate individual, same email thread, and he was gracious enough to respond to me. But I would like you folks to take a look at each of each of my emails that I sent, and I respectfully ask for your comment on it and what you intend to do. What it deals with is also the Warwick Fire Department sick time debacle. The city council years ago didn't do anything. They didn't do anything because they didn't look at the contract with skeptical eyes. As Rob Cody just asked you to do, I think for the future going forward, I think that's your responsibility. And I ask you this because I used to be on the other side of this. I was a contractor. And when a request for proposal was sent out, we looked at it with skeptical eyes. We wanted to know exactly what the customer was seeking from us and how to respond best to it. When we turned in our proposals, they in turn would look at what we were offering with skeptical eyes to make sure they were getting the best value for their money. That's what your responsibility is. And it's not up to the fire department to correct your I guess, inattention to detail, okay? Good faith contracting, unfortunately, should be where both sides, if there's an issue, either one finds, it brings it to the attention of the others. That's what the city should promote, good faith contracting. And just a few more comments, I'm sorry. So what I'm asking is not for you folks to abdicate your responsibility. Please. The citizens are counting on you. We elected you. Please step up for us. It was good money that was taken advantage of. We want it back. You should seek restitution, and if there's anything that anybody did that was wrong, they should be held to account. You want the message on the street to be that Warwick doesn't stand for this kind of business, okay? The citizens elected you because we don't want to stand for that. So please don't. And I'd just like to close that not every person is good, not every person is bad, but there are bad people. And bad people seek out opportunity. And what was wrong with the contract previously was an opportunity, and they sought it out and they took advantage of it. Go back, please. It's your responsibility now. Other folks didn't. Go back, make it correct, and restore the faith for the Warwick citizens that the city council will do whatever it takes, and the trust and faith in the Warwick Fire Department can once again be restored. Thank you.
And if you'd like to give your documents to the Sergeant of Arms, he will hand those out to the council people after the meeting. Thank you. Okay, at this time, unless there's objection from the council, I would like to move to the top of the agenda, PCO 30-21, the public hearing. Is there any objections to hearing that at this time? Okay, hearing none. We are now on PCO 30-21, committee report, public properties.
Recommend open public hearing.
Second by Councilman Foley. All those in favor of opening the public hearing, say aye. Aye. Any objections? Any abstentions? Okay. Is there someone here this evening to speak on behalf of this project?
Good evening, Mr. President, honorable members of the Warwick City Council. For the record, Attorney K. Joe Shishkachi, representing the applicant this evening, Montauk Shores Realty LLC. Before you tonight is a request for an abandonment of Pearl Avenue. It's a street abandonment. This application has received planning board approval, a recommendation to the council for approval. My client would respectfully request that this portion of Pearl Street be abandoned. There is an appraisal. He has agreed to pay fair market value for the property. The planning department, in their recommendation to the council, included several stipulations. My client will adhere to all the stipulations on that request. It's a pretty straightforward application. My client has had the opportunity to speak to the abutting neighbors, and he informs me that there has been no objection by the abutting neighbors. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I have a principal from the applicant here if the council has any questions for him. It's a very short and simple request. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Travis, as this is your ward, would you like to speak?
Yes, I know we have got no complaints, and it's not a very big piece of parcel, but I think it'll be an addition to get it abandoned, and then we can move forward with the rest of the property. So I'm in favor.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Ricks.
I'd just like to thank the planning department for, it appears on all accounts, working with the petitioner, making sure to address issues proactively, and also for reaching out to me and walking me through this so that I have a better understanding of it. I don't have any further comments. I would just say that everything seems to be in order, and I'd like to thank everyone for doing their due diligence to make this, I would say, a boring evening.
Thank you. We like that. The fair market value is $9,000 for this very small piece of property, and it ultimately puts it back on the tax roll. Does not increase any burden or need for any kind of city services. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Any other questions for members of the council? Councilman Lattiser.
Thank you, Mr. President. So as you all know, I've always been pro-growth, and we can't raise extra revenue if we don't grow, unless we raise taxes. So as Mr. Scacchi has pointed out, this is a small piece of property with $9,000 value, did you say?
Yes, that's the fair market value. That's the appraisal.
And by this request being granted, it's going to allow further development.
On the abutting property, just so everyone's aware of it, the planning department stipulations are there'll be no structures on this property at all. The city will retain an easement as well in case at some future point the city would need to run utility lines, a water line, a sewer line, that they would not need to seek permission because they will already have an easement to do so. That's pretty standard with most road abandonments.
So we have nothing to lose. It's a
win-win.
Piece of pie property that's not generating us any revenue, and this will increase our revenue. I'm all in favor of this, Mr. President. Thank you.
Mr. Lattiser. Any other questions from members of the council? Is there anyone from the public here to speak in favor of this project? Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak in favor? Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak against this project? Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak against this project? Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak at all on this project? Okay, hearing none, I need a motion to close the public hearing.
Move to close the public hearing.
And second by Councilman Foley, Councilman Howe, Councilman McElroy, Councilwoman Travis, Councilman Gephardt. Okay. Are there any additional questions from members of the council? Councilwoman Travis, do you have a motion?
Yes, I'd like to move favorable action on PCO-30-21.
Second by Councilman Lattiser, Councilman Gephardt, Councilman McElroy, Councilman Howe, Councilman Ricks, and Councilman Foley. Any additional questions? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll for favorable action. Yes.
Mr. Foley?
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt?
Yes.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser?
Yes.
Mr. McElroy?
Yes.
Mr. Ricks? Mr. Sinapi?
Yes.
Ms. Travis?
Yes.
9 yes, first passes.
Thank you. The motion passes.
Thank you very much. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, I would like us to go back into committees. I believe we still have a few agendas, items in the public safety and intergovernmental and public property. So if we can reconvene the public safety committee meeting at this time. Thank you.
Public safety is reconvened and
So stay here.
at 7:49. The last item in front of us is PCR 13621, a resolution relative to placing yield signs on Parade Road and Lago Road where each intersects Endicott Drive. Councilman Howe.
Request favorable action, traffic study backs up.
All right. Do we have any comments from the committee? Any comments from the council? Any comments from the public? Can we have a motion for favorable action?
Move favorable action.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The Public Safety Committee meeting is now closed at 7:50. I don't know who's hiding. Oh, he's over there. I think it's.
Finish up the public property next, or shall we go to governmental first?
Intergovernmental first. That's what Lynn's saying. Who's the? That's you.
It's now 7:51 and the Intergovernmental Committee is in session. The first order of business, the acceptance of the minutes from the committee meeting held on November 1st, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
I hear a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
The first item on the agenda is PCR 127-20, a resolution to discuss recommendations of the Chapter 4 Commission, PCR-36-19, relative to Chapter 4 of the Warwick Code of Ordinances entitled Animals and Fowl. Councilman Ricks?
Thank you. Let's see. I'm not sure if we have a precise date on our ETA for the revised Chapter 4. Let's see. Councilman Snappy, I'm not sure if you've heard anything as to an expected time for those revisions?
No, I have not yet heard the ETA on when we will receive the reviewed document.
Let's see. In that case, perhaps we could hold this to the first or the second meeting of the new year.
I don't have my calendar. Those guys. Lynn might have.
Make a hold till January 19th. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The Intergovernmental Committee adjourns at 7:54.
He's ready.
We're up.
Ready. Just because you're dressed down doesn't mean we're not working, but.
The City Council Committee on Public Properties, Land Use, and Community Affairs returns to order at 7:55 p.m. Second item on the agenda, PCR 42-21, a resolution designating February 9th as Joe Gallucci Day in the City of Warwick. Councilman Lattiser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to thank all of my colleagues on the City Council for co-sponsoring this for me in honor of our colleague, Councilman Gallucci. As you all know, I'm sure, everybody has their own touching stories about Councilman Gallucci, Council President Gallucci. We all have our mentor conversations with him over the years. One of his favorite sayings, of course, was today's cash. Yesterday was a canceled check, and tomorrow was a promissory note. It probably took me a better part of a year or two being with Councilman Gallucci to be able to memorize that and remember it. He would always give you the test, whether or not you were paying attention. Joe was, he was just a stand-up individual. He wasn't playing the political roles he was always trying to help all of his colleagues on the council, work with the administration over the years, work with everyone, recognize everyone's achievements. It's very difficult to express the impact that Councilman Galucci had on me over the years, for certain. I would like to read the resolution, if you all don't mind, for those folks who are listening, because it's not every day that we get to honor such a person as our friend Joe Galucci. It's a resolution designating February 9th as Joe Galucci Day in the city of Warwick. Whereas the health, safety, comfort, and welfare of the citizens of the city of Warwick are matters of paramount importance to the city council. And whereas Joseph Galucci was born on February 9th, 1935. And whereas Joseph Galucci graduated from Lockwood High School in 1953 and the University of Rhode Island in 1957. And whereas Joseph Galucci was a 20-year veteran of the Rhode Island Army National Guard, completing his service as a lieutenant colonel. And whereas Joseph Galucci was a dedicated public servant who faithfully served the people of the city of Warwick as councilman from Warwick's 8th Ward from 1977 to 1984, 1990 to 94, and 2015 to 2018, including as council president in 1983 to 84, 93 to 94, as well as clerk of the Board of Canvassers and director of Department of Human Services. And whereas Joseph Galucci is remembered for his soft-spoken yet compelling leadership, kindness, and passion for helping others. And whereas in addition to his many political and civic contributions, Joseph Galucci dedicated his life to making Warwick the best place to live, work, and raise a family. And whereas Joseph Galucci passed away on February 6, 2021, and is sadly missed by his family and friends, and whereas Joseph Galucci was a respected and beloved member of the community, and whereas the City Council desires to honor Councilman Galucci's memory and recognize his commitment and service to our community by designating February 9th as Joe Galucci Day in the city of Warwick. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council hereby designates February 9th as Joseph Galucci Day in the city of Warwick. And it has been co-sponsored by all of my colleagues on the City Council, and I thank you for that and ask for favorable action to honor this just amazing individual who has not only touched all of our lives, pretty much everyone that he came in contact with, as well as being a very devoted servant to our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Before I open it up to my colleagues on the committee, I'd also like to share a little story. I remember, in addition to that so memorable saying that he had about yesterday, canceled check, tomorrow, promissory notes, today, and he would make that motion with his hands, today is cash. Just really one of those stories that he would tell us so many times, and it had a lot of meaning to it, especially in his passing. It's a reminder that we have to treasure the present. I also, thinking about the significance of giving our colleague a day here in Warwick, it stands out to me another story that I remember with the Warwick recycling calendars, how Councilman Galucci would discuss how it used to be on St. Joseph's Day, there would be free Zappolis on from City Hall that would be handed out. I don't know how many were actually handed out, but apparently there would be some way back in the day. And so we busted each other up about St. Joseph's Day and why isn't it recognized on the city council calendar, the recycling calendar that goes out? Or rather, I was the one who that particular year made the phone call to make sure that it did get printed on the calendar, which he found to be very important as an Italian American. And so I suppose that my question, if anyone from the administration happens to know, and my apologies for putting anybody on the spot, if the recycling calendars have not been printed yet, and in the event that this city council takes favorable action here tonight, I'd like to express that we make sure that Joe Gallucci Day is reflected on our City of Warwick calendars. So that is if they haven't been printed yet for this year. If that's all been finalized, then we can always look into that next year. So without further comment there, I'd like to open this up to members of this committee. Members of the council. Members of the public. Seeing none, do we have a motion?
I'd like to move favorable action.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And finally, we have PCR 126-21, a resolution relative to changing the name of the beach access road at City Park to Bob Levitt Trail. Councilwoman Travis.
Yes, I'm very honored to be able to do this request, and I move favorable action. I also would like to read the resolution, if you don't mind, because Bob Levitt is here with us today with his daughter and son-in-law, and I'd like to pay tribute to this. A resolution relative to the changing of the name of the beach access road at City Park to Bob Levitt Trail. Whereas the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of the city of Warwick are matters of paramount importance to the city council. And whereas Beach Access Road is that certain street in City Park that runs southeasterly from Stephen O'Connor Boulevard, providing access to Buttonwoods Beach. And whereas a request has been made to name the street as Bob Levitt Trail. Whereas Bob Levitt retired after 34 years of dedicated service to the city of Warwick, where he took great pride in his work to make Warwick a better place to live, and whose contributions included the clearing and development of many roads, bike paths, parks, fields, playgrounds, and sport complex, as well as providing tireless efforts responding to the city's public safety needs following the blizzard of '78. And whereas pursuant to Section 70-135 of the Code of Ordinance, the City Council must approve the name change of any street. And whereas pursuant to Section 70-137 of the Code of Ordinance, the change of the street name has been reviewed by the Department of Public Works. And whereas the City Council's desire to honor his dedicated service by changing the name of the beach access road to City Park to Bob Levitt Trail. Now therefore be resolved that the official name of the beach access road in City Park on the southeasterly side of Stephen O'Connor Boulevard, providing access to Buttonwoods Beach, is hereby named Bob Levitt Trail, and the Department of Public Works is hereby requested to post street signs on that street. The city clerk is hereby directed to forward a copy of the resolution to the Director of Public Works, the city engineer, the chief of police, the chief of the fire department, and the director of emergency management agency. I also was the one that sponsored Stephen O'Connor's Boulevard when we did it many years ago. So this is really great that I could. And Bob, could you stand up? We want to be able to thank you for your 34 years of service. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any comment from members of the committee? Members of the council? Members of the public? Thank you, and please remember to state your name into the mic.
Good evening. My name is Linda Cody. Bob Levitt is my father. He's a lifelong resident. He started working for the city in 1958 in the highway department, making $1.34 an hour, a time when the city was growing, when Route 2 was a drive in the country, a time when streets were sanded by two men on the back of a truck shoveling sand onto the roads, a time when each summer a couple of men would get in a rowboat, row down Bucky Brook to clean the trash and clear the brush to keep the water flowing. They were known as the Bucky Brook Navy. He quickly learned how to run the equipment, eventually learning how to run every piece of equipment the city owned, although his favorite was the grader. He called that his machine. He took great pride in his work, believing he was making the city a better place to live. His strong work ethic led him to being assigned jobs around the city, such as building the roads, ballpark, city park, which helped Warwick become what it is today. He also built the road that would be named after him. Shortly before the blizzard of '78, he became a supervisor. Although his pay was salaried and would not receive overtime, he did everything he could to help the citizens of Warwick. He worked for a week and a half straight, taking breaks, napping in his truck when he could, running equipment and doing anything that needed to be done, all the while checking on his family to be sure they were doing okay. He didn't complain about the hours, that he was on salary, or refused to do jobs that were not supervisor's duties. He just did his best to help clear the roads and get the city back to normal. Because he could run every piece of equipment in the city yard, it was realized he needed to go back to being an operator, which he did. The city needed him. After 34 years, my father retired. The city offered an incentive program for people to retire so there wouldn't be any layoffs when sanitation was privatized. He reluctantly took the incentive. To this day, he states he would probably still be working for the city if it wasn't for that incentive. Even after retiring, employees of the city would call him to ask advice on why certain jobs were completed the way they were. He was, and still is, always willing to teach others what he knows. Since his retirement, he fixes small engines to keep busy. When he heard the cemetery commission needed lawnmowers, he asked me to contact them and tell them he had a couple they could have. Unfortunately, due to insurance issues, they could not accept them. Even at 81 years old, he's still doing his best to take care of the city. After any snowstorm, you can find him on his tractor, making sure the storm drain on his street is clear and widening it to be sure any emergency vehicles can get down. This is just a small example of how civic-minded Bob Levitt is. He's a dedicated family man who believes every citizen has a responsibility to help take care of the city. Through his work ethic, my father has demonstrated by example how important it is to work together and take pride in the city of Warwick. I appreciate your consideration in naming this road Bob Levitt Trail to recognize his dedication and service to the city of Warwick. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
Move favorable action.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. The committee closes at 8:10 p.m.
Welcome back, everyone. We are back into the full council meeting. We have done roll call, the salute to the flag, executive communications, general communications, and public comment. We've also done the public hearing. So at this time, we're going to move back to number one on which is the consent calendar, PCR 148-21, resolution relative to bids. Committee report, Finance.
Favorable action?
For action, Councilman Howe.
Move favorable action?
Second by Councilman Foley. Go ahead, Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Bid 2022-240, message archive and appliance support. Bid 2019-208, network connectivity. Bid 2019-209, Cox Managed Telephone Service. Bid 2022-202, radar calibrations and repair. Bid 2022-242, EDR course level 2 travel. Bid 202, is that 2022? It's a misprint. I apologize, City Clerk. Thank you. Bid 2022-215, structural firefighting helmets. Bid 2022-191, floor mats, dry, wet, mop rentals. Bid 2022-189, heating oil. Bid 2021-034, HVAC maintenance repairs for city-owned buildings. Bid 2021-172, State of Rhode Island ice melt products. Bid 2022-241, State of Rhode Island lamps, ballasts, and related electrical supplies. That concludes the bid package, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members of the council that were not asked during the Finance Committee meeting earlier this evening? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll for favorable action.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Mr. Foley?
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt?
Yes.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser?
Yes.
Mr. McElroy?
Yes.
Mr. Ricks?
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi?
Speak up.
Said yes.
Oh, wait, yes. Ms. Travis?
Yes.
9 yes.
Thank you. The consent calendar passes. Next up, we have already done under the public hearing PCO 30-21, so we're going to move to unfinished business. First up is PCO 32-21, committee report, Ordinance.
Committee recommends favorable action.
For action, Councilman Lattiser.
Move favorable action on PCO 32-21.
Second by Councilwoman Travis. This is for second passage, correct, Councilman?
Correct.
Are there any questions that were not asked earlier this evening in the Ordinance Committee? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll for favorable action for second passage.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Mr. Foley?
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt?
Yes.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser?
Yes.
Mr. McElroy?
Yes.
Mr. Ricks?
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi?
Yes.
Ms. Travis?
Yes.
9 yes, second passage.
Thank you. The motion passes. Number 2 this evening is PCO 15-19. That is going to be held until December 6th. Number 3 this evening is PCO 9-21. An ordinance requiring collective bargaining agreement documentation to be submitted to the City Council at least 30 days prior to ratification. Committee report, Ordinance.
Committee recommends favorable action with an amendment.
For action, Councilman Lattiser.
Move favorable action on PCO 9-21 as amended. And I will defer to the solicitor to read in the amendments.
Yep. We're just going to get a second first for favorable action with an amendment. Second by Councilman Foley, Councilman McElroy. Okay, you make an amendment. You'd like Mr. Walsh to read it in?
Please.
Councilman Lattiser moves an amendment that changes in the title, the word 30 to be 14. And in line 35 of the proposed ordinance change, we're going to delete the word and number 30 and insert in its place the word and number 14. In line 37, we're going to delete the words other related. And after the word documentation, we're going to insert required or intended to be presented as part of the ratification process.
Well said.
Okay. Yeah, you'll
I
make
move
that motion
favorable
as
action
favorable?
as amended.
Do we have a second on the amendment? Second by Councilman Foley, Councilman McElroy, Councilman Howe. Any questions on the amendment? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll for favorable action on the amendment.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Mr. Foley?
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt?
Yes.
Mr. Howe? Mr. Lattiser?
Yes.
Mr. McElroy?
Yes.
Mr. Ricks? Mr. Sinapi?
Yes.
Ms. Travis?
Yes.
9 yes to amend.
Councilman Lattiser?
I move favorable action as amended.
Second by Councilwoman Travis. Any questions on the amendment?
I would welcome any co-sponsors too that would like to co-sponsor.
Any co-sponsors, any questions? Councilman Foley, Councilman Ricks, Councilman McElroy, Councilman Gephardt's giving me the circle. Councilwoman Travis. Any other co-sponsors? All right.
Thank you.
Okay, and so the clerk will call the roll for favorable action as
Mr.
amended.
McAllister?
Yes.
Mr. Foley?
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt?
Yes.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser?
Yes.
Mr. McElroy?
Yes.
Mr. Ricks?
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi?
Yes.
Ms. Travis?
Yes.
9 yes as amended.
Thank you. The motion passes. Number 4 this evening is PCR 127-20. That's going to be held until January 19th. And number 5 this evening is PCR 42-21. Resolution dedicating February 9th as Joe Gallucci Day in the city of Warwick. Committee report, Community Affairs.
Recommend favorable action.
Sorry.
Recommend favorable action on PCR 42-21.
Thank you very much. Second
Happy
by
to help.
Councilwoman Travis, Councilman Gephardt, Councilman McElroy. Any questions or comments that were not asked earlier this evening? And Councilman Howe would like to second as well. Any other questions? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll for favorable action for February 9th as Joe Gallucci Day.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Mr. Foley?
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt?
Yes.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser?
Yes.
Mr. McElroy?
Yes.
Mr. Ricks?
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi?
Yes.
Ms. Travis?
Yes.
9 yes, motion passes.
Outstanding. Congratulations, everyone. Number 6 this evening is PCR 143-21. Committee report, Public Safety.
Point of clarification, this claim especially was submitted to us with a recommendation to deny. So are we moving for unfavorable action? I just want to be clear. On Reese?
The committee report was unfavorable action, and just to clarify to the councilman's question, I believe the recommendation on Reese was to approve a certain number. I'll pull it up in a second here, but there was, this one had the problem with seeking dual compensation. So it would, unfavorable action would be to, a vote yes on unfavorable would be to deny the claim outright, and the rationale that the committee presented was because separate source of income was being requested.
So we move unfavorable action on this.
Okay, do we have a second for unfavorable action? Second by Councilman Lattiser, Councilman Sinapi. Are there any questions on this claim at this time that were not asked in public safety? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll for unfavorable action.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Mr. Foley?
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt?
Yes.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser? Mr. McElroy?
Yes.
Mr. Ricks?
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi?
Yes.
Ms. Travis?
Yes.
9 yes, unfavorable.
Thank you. It's unfavorable. Number 7 this evening is PCR 144-21, Committee Report, Public Safety.
Point of clarification again. On this one, the recommendation was to deny. Correct. So we should be moving for favorable action?
No.
Unfavorable still. Okay. I just want to be clear.
Yeah, the committee recommended unfavorable action.
Unfavorable action.
Correct. Yeah. So, yes, the committee report was unfavorable action. So would you like to move that as unfavorable? And do we have a second? Second by Councilman Lattiser, Councilwoman Travis. Are there any questions on this claim that were not asked during Public Safety Committee meeting earlier? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll for unfavorable action.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Mr. Foley?
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt?
Yes.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser?
Yes.
Mr. McElroy?
Yes.
Mr. Ricks?
No.
Mr. Sinapi?
Yes.
Ms. Travis?
Yes.
8 yes, 1 no, unfavorable.
Thank you. PCR 144-21 is unfavorable. We are now moving on to new business. First up is PCO 36-21, Committee Report Ordinance.
Committee recommends favorable action.
For action, Councilman Lattiser.
I move for favorable action on PCO 36-21.
Second by Councilwoman Travis. Are there any questions that were not asked during the Ordinance Committee earlier this evening? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll for favorable action.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Mr. Foley?
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt?
Yes.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser?
Yes.
Mr. McElroy?
Yes.
Mr. Ricks? Mr. Sinapi? Ms. Travis?
Yes.
9 yes, first passage.
Thank you for first passage, favorable action. Number 2 this evening is PCR 126-21, Committee Report, Public Properties.
Recommend favorable action.
For action, Councilwoman Travis.
I move favorable action on PCR-126-21.
Second by Councilman Lattiser, Councilman Howe. Are there any other questions or comments at this time? Councilman Howe.
Councilwoman, may I be added as a co-sponsor?
I'm sorry?
May I be added as a co-sponsor?
Sure.
Thand you.
I would like to be added as well, Councilwoman.
Okay.
Mr. Lattiser.
As well.
Mr. McElroy as well. All right. The clerk will call the roll then for favorable action.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Mr. Foley?
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt?
Yes.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser?
Yes.
Mr. McElroy?
Yes.
Mr. Ricks?
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi? Yes. Ms. Travis?
Yes.
9 yes, motion passes.
Thank you. The motion passes. And congratulations, Councilwoman.
Thank you.
Next up is PCR 136-21, Committee Report, Public Safety.
Favorable action.
For action, Councilman Howe.
Move favorable action.
Second by Councilman Lattiser. Are there any questions that were not asked during the Public Safety Committee meeting? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll for favorable action.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Mr. Foley?
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt?
Yes.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser?
Yes.
Mr. McElroy?
Yes.
Mr. Ricks?
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi? Ms. Travis?
Yes.
9 yes, motion passes.
Thank you. The motion passes. Number 4 this evening is PCR 147-21, Committee Report, Finance.
Favorable action.
For action, Councilwoman Travis. This is the school bond.
Move favorable action on PCR-147-21.
Second by Councilman Lattiser, Councilman McElroy. Are there any questions or comments that were not asked earlier this evening in the Finance Committee meeting? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll for favorable action.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Mr. Foley?
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt? Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser?
Yes.
Mr. McElroy?
Yes.
Mr. Ricks?
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi? Ms. Travis?
Yes.
9 yes, motion passes.
Thank you. The motion passes. We will now move on to unanimous consent. Ward 1, anything under unanimous consent? Ward 2? Ward 3?
Pass.
Ward 4?
Pass.
Ward 5?
Pass.
Ward 6?
Pass.
Ward 7 passes. Ward 8? Ward 9? Pass. Councilwoman Travis.
If there be no further business by the honorable body, I move to a docket session.
Any objection to moving the docket section? Hearing none, we are in the docket session. Ward 1, anything to docket?
Yes, I would like to docket a resolution requesting the state legislature, the state of Rhode Island, using any excess funds, and I'll explain that in a moment, from the lottery to be dedicated, earmarked toward public education. What I'm looking for is a benchmark in 2021, whatever the revenues are from the lottery, that would be our benchmark. And then a certain percentage of any increase from that benchmark going forward would be earmarked for public education to help lessen the burden on the property taxes in the state of Rhode Island.
Thank you. We'll put that in intergovernmental committee. Anything else to docket, Ward 1? Ward 2?
One item. A resolution requesting information on accidents or damage in relation to City of Warwick ball fields.
Intergovernmental. Ward 3, anything to docket? Pass. Ward 4?
Yes, 2. A resolution in regards to the removal of no parking signs on Bellman Avenue. And the second,
That one we'll put in public safety resolution.
is an ordinance in regards to erecting no parking signs in front of the Walter Santos Scenic Overlook area on the eastern of Beach Avenue.
We'll put that in the ordinance committee. Ward 5. Ward 6.
Pass.
Ward 7 passes. Ward 8. Ward 9.
Pass.
Everybody have a great evening. Thank you very much.
You have a nice holiday.